The Masque of the Red Death is a 1964 horror film directed by Roger Corman.
Vincent Price stars as Prince Prospero, and it's set in medieval Italy. He's a rich nobleman who lives in a castle. There's lots of poor, hungry peasants surrounding his castle in a nearby village. He's passing through this village at the start of the film, threatens to kill some of them just for disrespecting him, basically. So a bit of a nasty piece of work. And then he discovers that there's an old woman in the village who has a case of the Red Death, hence the title, which is basically a form of plague. He orders the village to be burned to the ground, takes some poor peasants back to his castle for his own amusement, and then invites all the local nobility to come to his castle. Well, let's say shield is the popular term at the moment. Shield from the plague and just let the peasants, get on with it, basically. So yeah, the people he takes back, there's Francesca, a beautiful peasant girl played by Jane Asher, her boyfriend and her father. Basically, he's going to sort of kill them in some horrible way for the amusement of his guests. Then we discover that he's a Satan worshipper, performs lots of strange rituals with his consort by the name of Juliana, who wants to basically become betrothed to Satan. There's just several parties filled with debauchery and drink and entertainment for all these rich arseholes. So basically, there's lots of rich people holed up while all the peasants perish in a horrible disease. So, quite timely.
There is actually an article I found online. It's on slate.com. The headline is "The Rich Can't Hide from a Plague. Just Ask Edgar Allan Poe." It was written by Maya Phillips. It's an interesting article. I hadn't actually seen this one before. I've seen his other. So this was Roger Corman's first film he directed in this country, for tax reasons, I think. I was reading an interview with him, and he was saying he didn't have the best time filming over here because the British like to just have tea breaks all the time.
Yeah, he said there's too slow compared to the US.
Too slow compared to America. They didn't have enough time to.
Cheek of
but
it.
Apparently they came over here and they had longer. So I think most of his films that he made in America took 3 weeks to film. But when they came to Britain, they had 5 weeks. But they still didn't get anything done because everyone was having tea breaks all the time. And union meetings and tea breaks.
Nothing wrong with a good cup of tea. You can't get anything done without a cup of tea.
You can't. No, exactly. I don't know what they're missing out in America without a good cup of tea. So he did how many Poe films? He did a few, didn't he?
He did 8, I think.
8
in total. Yeah. So he was a bit of a Poe fanatic, shall we say?
He was. Yeah. I mean, I have read bits of Poe in my life. Someone gave me a book of his. I was really young. I was like 8, and it was pretty heavy going stuff for an 8-year-old. Both in how it was written, but its language, the use of language, and the horrific nature of some of the stories. But I kind of went back and read it when I was older. What I love about... I hadn't read this, but I read it today, actually, after I watched the film. And the language is so descriptive. This film is very... It's very visual. It's so visual, this film, and it feels like the text of the book. And the dialogue and the look of this film is just amazing. It's so exquisite. It's so... the dialogue is really rich, and I love some of the lines in there, especially with Vincent Price delivering them. They're just really...
I was going to say, yeah, when you got Vincent Price delivering the lines, then yeah, you listen, don't you?
You listen to everything he says. He's from that age, like Christopher Lee, where they're these great actors that did these great... horror films in those days were great because of the actors delivering the lines, and you're right, you just listen to what they're saying. It looks beautiful, like I said. I think it's exquisite to look at. It's really colourful, and these great sets. So it was shot by the cinematography was done by Nicholas Roeg, and he's kind of puts his mark on there with kind of interesting cuts and lots of colours and long tracking shots through big sets and corridors. I think so a lot of the sets they used were used in the film Beckett, right, in 1964 with Richard Burton and Peter O'Toole. And then they also created these kind of long corridor sequences for people to kind of run through. And it really kind of immerses you in the piece, I think. I mean, I think at times the film felt a lot like a ballet, I thought, because a lot of the sets are very big. These big, wide sets that you can the camera can kind of swing around in. And then, of course, you've got these parties going on. So there are people dancing, and it all feels very choreographed. There are certain scenes that feel like almost like a musical dance going on in the background with Vincent Price going through the people. And I think it makes the whole thing feel quite extravagant and just really interesting to look at. So I really liked it for that. It's very different, I think, to his other Poe films. This one, I think this one, and maybe that's Nicholas Roeg's influence on it, where he wasn't used in the other films. It's got a kind of, he's got that, he used a lot of colour, Nicholas Roeg, you know, lots of strange colours on his lenses and tints and the camera doing interesting things. So I think that possibly added to the look and the feel of this film.
Plot-wise, you know, I've seen Pit and the Pendulum, although it's the remake that I've seen. You know, you got this vile guy. I mean, isn't Vincent Price in the original?
Yeah.
Of Pit and the Pendulum, yeah. Quite a similar character, I think. I mean, Lance Henriksen is in the remake one that I've seen. But again, he's, you know, this horrible person that tortures people. I mean, obviously his motivation is different, but he takes like a peasant girl hostage and then tortures her boyfriend. So not entirely dissimilar. And I thought Francesca, you know, takes it all in her stride, to be honest. You know, from being plucked from her peasant village and then put in lots of fine robes, told her he's a Satan worshipper when she's, you know, a devout believer in God. She wasn't as horrified as I thought maybe she could have been. Obviously she wanted to escape, but particularly towards the end it was, yeah, she was like happy to just go seemingly go along with everything.
I mean, she kind of comes across as quite headstrong, but yeah, she's that kind of innocent young woman from a village who does believe in God. Yeah, you'd think that maybe she'd be a bit more shocked at what she's seeing and what she's having to be put through, because she's being put through quite a few things, you know. I
mean, you know, in the first scene, he asks her to choose who's going to die out of her boyfriend and her father. You know, that's in the first 5 minutes, so it's pretty horrific.
She's certainly, you know, the next scene when she's been taken to the castle and he basically gets her to disrobe and jump in the bath, and she has things to say, and she definitely. She knows she's going to survive this, and you know, she obviously Juliana's character as well, who has a thing for Prospero, and Francesca, you know, she's not stupid, you know, she knows what this other woman wants, and she kind of puts her in her place a little bit. Just going back to the dialogue, there is a great scene between the two of them when he's basically got her to lose her cross, to not wear her cross. He starts talking about the master, and she asks who the master is, and he says, his delivery is amazing, because he says Satan, and then he's like Lord of the Flies, fallen angel, and then he mouths the devil. He doesn't say it, he mouths it, and it's such a great. I actually rewound back to watch that bit again. Because I just love the way he decides to say that bit silently, which kind of gives it even more power to it. It's a great line, and I think, like I said before, I think the dialogue is really good in here. It was written by Charles Beaumont, and so it was written. I found this really interesting interview with Roger Corman, and so Charles Beaumont was this young screenwriter from America he wrote a lot of the Twilight Zone episodes and some of the Hitchcock Presents and things like that. He died quite young. He died at the age of 38. So he basically wrote in that Vincent Price is a Satanist in this piece, but Roger Corman didn't like much of his. That was kind of it. That's pretty much, I think, what he took from his original screenplay. And then they also brought in a man named R. Wright Campbell, who came in and kind of rewrote it all. More to Roger Corman's approval, and that's where. And he also then brought in, from another Poe story, Hop Frog. He brought in the character of the dwarf with the small dancing girl to kind of add another, because the short story. Have you read The Masque of the Red Death?
No,
the original.
No.
So, like I said, I read it today, and it's beautifully written, and it's, you know, full of wonderful language and words, but it's very short, and it's. You can definitely see this film in there, and I think it's done the film. I think the film does the story justice, but there's definitely more in the film that's not in that original story. There's more, obviously, that kind of has to be where a short story is concerned, but there's a lot more going on here, and there's clearly added elements. But it's interesting that they've added elements from other Poe stories, not just made stuff up to kind of put in it. But I really enjoyed it, and I think, you know, I'm a big fan of kind of films from that era. It's interesting that it doesn't, although it's filmed in Britain and has a lot of British cast. So I think one of the things, if you're American, especially at that point, if you came over here to film a film here, you could have a director and you could have an American star, but then everyone else had to be British. So of course all the other actors in the film are British, and you of course you've got Jane Asher in there. You've got Patrick McGee, who's this like great kind of, I think he's got a bit of a Shakespeare actor over here. He's, big, forceful line delivery, a very interesting look about him. But the interesting thing I found with the film was that it doesn't really, although it's filmed here, it feels more like that kind of American, the kind of horror films and films in general that came out of America in the 60s, that kind of trippy, they were going through that whole, Summer of Love, and obviously they were doing a lot of acid, and because of the colours in this film, it feels more like one of those American films than a British, because a British horror at this point would have been Hammer. It would have been very gothic, and although it's certainly got that feel to it, I mean, obviously it's a Poe story, so and he was an American writer, but I think he was very influenced by British gothic horror as well. The film to me feels like, there's that great film. Is it? I think it's Roger Corman film The Trip, which has got Peter Fonda in it, and it feels like that film as opposed to a kind of a British Hammer gothic horror film, although maybe a little bit with that in there as well. I'd be quite interested to see, it was remade. It was remade in 1989.
It was remade twice in 1989. There was one, obviously, that was produced by Roger Corman, which I think had Adrian Paul from Highlander.
Right, and it also had Patrick McNee from The Avengers in it.
It's not supposed to be very good, that version, I think.
Right.
And there was another one starring Frank Stallone.
It doesn't sound like that would have been very good either.
Well, I think that's set in modern times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that doesn't get great reviews either. So
okay, but I was thinking it would be quite interesting to remake it, because obviously, I mean, I think it looks great. I'm not saying it needs to be remade. It looks great for what it was at the time. It's a really good, and Vincent Price's performance is amazing. But to really kind of, I don't know, either to make a big house set that moves through, because I love how, I mean, I think it is referenced in the story, these different coloured rooms, and there's that great scene where they go through the different, and they literally go through the rooms and they change colour. They're basically the same room, but they're different colours. There's a yellow one and a purple one and a white one, and then this black one as well. And I think you could, although that it looks great in this, it does look slightly restricted because of its time. But I think it'd be quite interesting to see what they would do with an updated. You could really be quite horrific with this film, actually.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not very gory. It's not hugely scary. I mean, Vincent Price is quite menacing, but it's not terrifying.
I really enjoyed it, and I'd like to watch it again. So we watched it on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
But it's coming out somewhere?
Yeah, and I think the 22nd of September, Scream Factory are releasing it in the States. And in the UK it's coming out, I can't remember the exact date, it's in October. Studio Canal are putting it out, and they've both got like restored pictures and extra features, obviously. I don't think the two releases are that dissimilar, although the Scream Factory one does claim to have two different versions, one of which it says is extended. It's unclear at the moment whether the Studio Canal release has both of these cuts, and I couldn't figure out exactly what the extended stuff was. And like you say, there was stuff cut out for the release here. One, I think, was when Hazel Court's character Juliana, she's doing a sort of ritual so she can be betrothed to Satan, and it's almost like a trippy dream sequence where she's lying on a slab, and all these different, I don't know if they're supposed to be demons or what, come along and sort of look like they're going to stab her and things like that, and that goes on for about 5 minutes, I think, doesn't it? So I think that was cut out, and I think there was another scene where she brands herself with an inverted crucifix, which I think was also cut out. I mean, that was both those scenes were in the version on Amazon. So whether those are the extended scenes and what Scream Factory has got is like the edited UK version and the normal version, and that's what they're saying is the extended one. I don't know. I couldn't, I had a little dig, but I couldn't find what the differences were going to be. I think the running time's about 1 minute difference. So if you do want to pick it up, I mean, obviously the Scream Factory one will be locked to Region A. If you're in the UK and you can't play Region A, then you're stuck with the Studio Canal one anyway. It might be worth waiting and seeing what both releases have, and then weighing up which one you want to go for.
So that was The Masque of the Red Death, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Hit the subscribe button there, and don't forget to push that bell for notifications. There's other videos to check out over here. Come and find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and join us next week for another video.